We all know that the use of cards for payments have risen steadily in recent years, a trend that has accelerated during the pandemic. After all, who on earth would want to handle cash these days with that nasty virus around? But it's costing retailers around £1 billion a year in the UK to process card transactions. So in this video, what can we do to keep down the cost of payments? Hi everyone, I'm Martin Bamford, a Chartered Financial Planner at Informed Choice, and today I'm looking at a new report from the British Retail Consortium. They have shared new figures which show that the use of cards for payment transactions has continued to rise in recent years. So going back to 2016, card transactions represented about 54% of all transactions for retailers, and bringing that all the way forwards to 2019, the figure has gone up to 61%. And of course, 2019 was pre-pandemic. We know that since March, since the onset of lockdown and all the changes to the way that we live our lives these days, there has been an accelerated use of cards, of digital payments, of contactless payments, because after all, who wants to go handling cash these days? In fact, many retailers are actively discouraging the use of cash. They're pushing us towards contactless payments. So we know that pre-pandemic, card payments represented around 4 in every £5 spent with retailers. And that use is only growing as we use contactless, as we move more of our shopping habits online. It's a good thing. It's a good thing in many respects that we're using less cash and more card payments. However, using cards to pay for things is expensive. It's incredibly expensive for retailers. And of course, that cost then gets passed on to us, the consumer. We ultimately pay the card processing costs borne by the retailers. So this is a really important subject. The cost to retailers back in 2019 of accepting card payments rose to £950 million. They spent £1.1 billion in 2019 processing all of the different types of payments that they accepted. Now that £1.1 billion, of course, as I said, is passed on to us. It's passed on to consumers via higher prices for the goods we buy in shops. Shops are charged an average of 18.4 pence for every credit card transaction, and that cost has gone up. It's gone up by 15% per transaction since 2016. It's slightly more affordable for shops to process a debit card transaction as opposed to a credit card transaction. They're paying in 2019 an average of 5.9 pence per debit card transaction, and the cost of processing debit cards has also risen, but at a slightly slower pace, up 6% from 2016. And as well as the higher cost of processing debit and credit card payments in store, lots of businesses have received notices that they'll have to pay higher fees to process payments online. So they're being hit from all sides. Now we know it is a tough old world out there for retailers. It was tough even before the pandemic. There were rising costs, higher rates and rents to pay on the high street for retail premises, and also falling footfall because our shopping habits are changing, we're moving online. And then of course the pandemic came along, and as with all things, the pandemic served as a bit of a catalyst. It changed our behaviours, so we moved more of our shopping to online channels. We shopped in physical retailers a bit less, and that's hurt their business models too. Add to those pressures the increasing cost of processing card payments, and it really is tough out there for retailers. And as I mentioned, ultimately it is us, the consumer, the end consumer, who pays for these card processing costs, an average last year of £40 per household. So don't believe you're getting something for free when you whip out your debit or your credit card or use contactless payment. You are paying for it every year, 40 quid per household on average last year. Now, a group of stakeholders have come together. They're calling for some action to be taken to tackle this issue of high card processing costs. And the group consists of the British Retail Consortium, the British Independent Retailers Association, the Association of Convenience Stores, the Federation of Small Business, and UK Hospitality. They're all grouping up, coming together, and they want some action to be taken to tackle this very high cost of processing card payments. The topic is also on the radar of the government and the UK's payment system regulator. They have a review underway, and separately HM Treasury had a consultation underway which actually closed today. So lots of different groups very interested in this subject at the moment and what it means in terms of consumer costs and also costs for retailers. In terms of specific actions, the British Retail Consortium wants to see action taken around excessive card payment costs. So Andrew Cregan, who is head of finance policy at British Retail Consortium, said, with card payments accounting for almost 80% of retail sales, it is vital that the government takes action to tackle excessive card costs. Without action, we will see businesses put under further pressure, and it will be consumers who are forced to pay the price. And then the British Independent Retailers Association is calling for smaller retailers to have access to the same payment terms for card processing as larger retailers. So Jeff Moody, who is commercial director at the British Independent Retailers Association, said the contracts available to large national chains are often not available to individual smaller independent retailers. With card transactions now the majority of their payment transactions, these costs are therefore being felt by consumers. And then the Association of Convenience Stores wants to see a restored national network, so improving access to cash, because we've lost so many cash machines, so many ATMs in recent years, effectively forcing people to pay for everything with cards. So the group wants to see this, and they also want to see a method for retailers to get access to the best deals and easily switch card payment providers. So a more effective system for that to take place. Now, if you want to do something about this, if you've watched this video and you thought, goodness, that's bad news for retailers, ultimately it's bad news for me as a consumer, there are two things I think we can do today to take some action. The first is to make sure you pay with your debit card and not your credit card. It costs the shops, it costs the retailers more than 3 times as much to process a credit card transaction as it does to process a debit card transaction. And that extra cost is effectively funding things like cashback rewards and the points you get when you use your credit card. So you're paying for those things, you're paying for your cash back, you're paying for your points through higher costs of goods and services. Use a debit card where you can, try and avoid using your credit card. Step number 2 is to write to your MP and highlight this issue. Point out that the high cost of processing card payments, around £1 billion a year, particularly at this time when we're all being encouraged to use cards instead of cash, is ultimately costing you, as a consumer, more money, and you'd like them to do something about it. Because of course the government could legislate here. They could legislate to tackle excessive card payment processing costs. That would help retailers, it would ultimately help consumers. If you're a retailer watching this, I would love to hear your thoughts down below. How much do you pay as a business each year to process card transactions? Are you happy to pay those processing costs? Because it's ultimately a more convenient way for your customers to pay for things, and hopefully you generate more sales because it's convenient. And if you often use your credit card to pay for things in store instead of a debit card, let me know down below if you're thinking of changing your behaviour now you've realised what the cost of doing so is. Thank you for watching this video. Are you following me on Twitter yet? Do pop along and follow me at Martin Bamford. Say hello, I'd love to connect with you there and start a conversation. Until next time, I'm Martin Bamford, and remember, when it comes to your money, the more you know, the faster it can grow.